I've always been the sort of man who lends things too freely. Sweaters, books, the occasional screwdriver, I hand them out with the understanding that I'll never see them again. My father used to warn me, Daniel, if you lend out a tool, you may as well carve your name into it. At least then when it's stolen, you'll know who had the literacy to do it. As a boy, I thought he was joking. By the time I was an adult, I realized he'd simply been predicting my life. Once, in high school, I lent a friend my copy of Catcher in the Rye. He never returned it, but 3 years later he mailed me a postcard from prison that simply read, "Holden was right." That was the closest I ever got to closure. For years, I believed the worst thing you could lend someone and never get back was a book. It turns out, it was my name. It all started after a car accident. Not my fault, thankfully, but it came with a settlement of $25,000. At that age, it felt like winning the lottery. I used the money to rent a tiny studio apartment for myself and my cat. My neighbors were older, retired, and politely nosy. One of them, Mr. Collins, a retired colonel, patrolled the courtyard as though it were still a battlefield. Every morning at 6, he stood on his balcony in plaid pajama pants, barking commentary at anything that moved. "That's not how a man hauls milk," he once shouted as I carried groceries, as though there were a tactical advantage to handling dairy. If Collins was the voice of discipline in my new life, then meeting Sharon was the exact opposite, chaos wrapped in a sigh. She was my age, perpetually tragic, always circling some invisible disaster. Her 2 children were in foster care, for reasons she couldn't discuss. And because I had the instincts of a Labrador retriever when it comes to people in need, I leapt in. I bought Dora the Explorer sheets for her daughter, sports car posters for her son, even helped her get a car. At work, I bragged about my newfound charity to Brenda, a hospice aide whose love for gossip could power a small city. Brenda had a way of delivering warnings like she was reading horoscopes, casual, a little smug, and always while reapplying lipstick. "People don't get kids taken away for being unlucky," she said, popping a peppermint. "They get kids taken away for being monsters. Mark my words, Daniel, you'll regret it." Brenda wasn't wrong. Before long, Sharon's estranged husband, Eddie, shuffled back into her life with his pill habit and cheap whiskey. The furniture I'd bought vanished, pawned off, no doubt, and the kids were crammed into a single tiny bedroom. I kept working long shifts and, like a fool, kept buying groceries for them. "Mr. Collins would watch me haul apples upstairs and mutter, 'You're raising someone else's army, son.' I didn't know whether to laugh or salute. Then came the mailbox. I hadn't checked it in weeks, expecting only pizza coupons. Instead, 6 government envelopes spilled out, accusing me of crimes I didn't even know existed. 5 warrants and a court date. For one dizzying moment, I thought maybe I'd been drafted. It's strange seeing your name in all caps on a warrant. It's like being famous, but only to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Sharon, as it turned out, had been pulled over in her beat-up car. Faced with the threat of losing her kids again, she calmly gave the officer my name and address. Later, when I confronted her, she smiled. "You don't have a record," she said. "They'll go easy on you. You don't want me to lose my kids, do you?" It was such a breathtaking piece of logic, I almost admired it. She had already drained my bank account and my pantry, why not my criminal record too? At the station, a young officer showed me dashcam footage. There was Sharon pregnant, curly hair exploding like cotton candy, a good half-foot shorter than me claiming to be Daniel. The cop admitted he believed her because he didn't want to get in trouble. Apparently, framing me for 5 misdemeanors seemed safer than asking a follow-up question. When I refused to play along, Sharon's mother, Marjorie, staged her own performance in the courtyard. She shrieked that she'd tell everyone I had molested the children. Her voice carried like a lawnmower, chewing gravel, and even the pigeons scattered. For a moment, I panicked, imagining my name on some grim registry. But then I noticed Mr. Collins at his doorway, arms folded, and half the neighbors gawking as if they'd paid for tickets. If Marjorie hoped to ruin me, she'd picked the worst possible stage. CPS returned, and the kids went back into foster care. I told Brenda at work, hoping for sympathy. Instead, she beamed, practically glowing with vindication. "I told you," she said, crunching her peppermint. "They don't change, Daniel. They just find new ways to ruin your life." It was the closest she'd ever come to kindness. Sharon retaliated by handing my number to every degenerate in the county. My phone buzzed at all hours, with offers for drugs, sex, and loans. Someone smashed my car window and scrawled LIAR across the back in shoe polish. It wasn't neat block letters either, it looked smeared, like someone had written it with their thumb or possibly their big toe. My bird feeder was beheaded. The next morning Mr. Collins pointed at it and declared, "Casualties of war." He gave me a nod that almost felt like approval. Eventually, Sharon and Eddie landed in jail for identity theft, drug charges, and child endangerment. The apartment complex installed cameras. Life slowly stumbled back towards something like normal. Looking back, what shocks me most isn't the theft, the lies, or even Marjorie's courtyard theatrics. It's Sharon's absolute belief that I'd accept it. That I'd nod politely in court and wear her record like a borrowed coat. For years, I thought the worst thing you could lend someone and never get back was a book. At least with a book, no one shows up at your door asking for meth at 3 in the morning. Then again, I suppose it depends on the book.